Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the damp chill of a limestone cavern, where your footsteps echo against walls that have watched the slow crawl of millennia. You duck under a low arch, careful not to bump your head, and feel the stale, earthy air hug your lungs. Callao Cave in northern Luzon doesn't look like much at first glance, just another hollow pocket in the side of a karst hill. But tonight, it is your portal, your time machine, your bed for the strangest sleepover you'll ever have. Somewhere in here, tucked into layers of dirt and rock, tiny bones once slept too, and when they were uncovered, the world had to rewrite the story of humanity. The bones were small, delicate, and confusing, and they whispered of a forgotten cousin, Homo luzonensis. You probably won't survive this, let's be honest. If you somehow landed here 0 years ago, you'd be barefoot, mosquito-bitten, and hungry in less than an hour. The cave is no cozy Airbnb. The jungle outside buzzes with predators and parasites. And oh, did I mention crocodiles the size of your car lurking in nearby rivers? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I want to know, where are you listening from right now? Drop your city and your local time in the comments. It's fun seeing how far this sleepy little tribe of ours has spread across the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lower yourself onto the cave floor, the stone cold beneath you. Your hands brush dust that isn't just dust layers of sediment, holding thousands of years of secrets. Archaeologists in the early 2000s did the same thing, their brushes teasing out fragments of teeth and bones. At first, they thought they belonged to a child. They were so small curved finger bones. Molars no larger than peppercorns, a femur thin as a flute reed. But the scientists looked closer, squinted under fluorescent lamps, and realized the bones didn't quite fit into any familiar human category. Not Neanderthal, not Denisovan, not modern Homo sapiens. Something else entirely. Picture yourself crouching over one of those finger bones. It curves like a claw, as if the hand it belonged to once wrapped firmly around tree branches. Not the neat, straight digits of your own hand, good for typing on your phone and fumbling with your car keys, but something more primitive, almost ape-like. Yet alongside this, the teeth suggest refinement shapes and patterns that echo modern humans. A mashup, a remix of evolution. Historians still argue whether this makes Homo luzonensis a distinct species or just a weird island variant of something older. You wipe sweat from your forehead. The cave holds heat like an oven, and you imagine these tiny island humans sheltering here. They weren't tall, maybe 4 feet on average, like a modern child, but they were tough. Imagine lugging firewood, climbing cliffs, or sneaking up on prey with legs half the length of yours. And yet, here their bones lie. Proof that they survived long enough for you to find them tens of thousands of years later. Here's the mainstream fact you can tuck under your pillow. The fossils of Homo luzonensis were dated to about 0 years ago, making them the oldest known human remains in the Philippines. That alone is staggering, because Luzon was never connected to the Asian mainland. To get here, they had to cross deep water, which means somebody these tiny humans or their ancestors built rafts, whether by accident or design. Imagine stumbling onto a log jam after a flood, clinging desperately, and washing up on a new island where your grandchildren's grandchildren would live for thousands of years. Accidental migration by oops. I fell in raft talk about an extreme vacation package. Quirky tidbit time. The bones weren't found all together like a neat skeleton, but scattered 2 teeth here, a finger bone there, a femur shard somewhere else. It's like finding pieces of 3 different jigsaw puzzles and realizing they all belong to a picture no one has ever seen. Some scholars even joke that Homo luzonensis is like the Frankenstein of prehistory. Part modern, part primitive, all mysterious. You run your hand across the stone wall, tracing grooves carved by dripping water. Above your head, bats rustle. Annoyed by your presence, somewhere in the dark, you swear you hear whispers not of ghosts, but of time itself. These caves aren't silent. They drip, creak, and sigh with the weight of ages. For Homo luzonensis, this wasn't just a hideout. It was survival headquarters. Here they planned hunts, sheltered from monsoon storms. maybe even told their own proto-stories by the flicker of firelight. But you don't get to linger in comfort. The cave floor is rough, littered with pebbles that dig into your skin. You stretch your legs and imagine the bones beneath your body. Once wrapped in flesh and ambition, now reduced to puzzle pieces for scientists with tweezers. You're not just lying on stone, you're lying on the blurred boundary of human history. The air grows colder the deeper you breathe it in, and your mind drifts. Did Homo luzonensis ever feel awe staring into this same cave ceiling? Did they wonder who came before them? Or who might come after? You'll never know. And maybe that's the point. The cave doesn't give answers, it offers only echoes. Still, one thought nags at you. The bones are small, fragile, but they endured 67. Their own years underground, while most of what you own, your phone, your clothes, your IKEA furniture won't survive even one landfill century. In the quiet, you laugh softly, because the joke's on us. The tiny humans outlasted the big human stuff. Outside, the jungle hums. Inside, your eyelids grow heavy, yet you're not sleeping. You're listening for the faint rustle of a 4-foot-tall ancestor climbing down from the rocks, looking at you as if to say, "Welcome back. We've been waiting." The cave doesn't care if you believe the story. The stones hold the bones either way. All you can do is lean back, breathe slower, and accept that tonight you share space with ghosts made of calcium and mystery. You stumble out of the cave, blinking against the sudden brightness. The air outside is heavy with moisture, thick as soup, and the jungle presses close on all sides. Welcome to Luzon, an island that feels less like paradise and more like a green prison. Today, you discover what isolation really means. No bridges, no shallow straits, no easy paddling across. Luzon has been cut off by deep channels for hundreds of thousands of years. Once you set foot here, you're stuck like a bug sealed in amber. The first thing you notice is the sound. It's deafening. Cicadas scream from the treetops. Frogs croak from hidden ponds. And somewhere out of sight, a hornbill claps its wings like a helicopter. It's beautiful, yes, but also overwhelming. And you realize quickly that silence is impossible here. For the tiny humans of Luzon, this noise was the soundtrack of life. Every chirp, every splash, every crack of a branch could mean dinner or danger. You push through tangled vines, feeling them snap against your skin. They smell of green rot, of growth too fast to keep up with. You step into mud that tries to claim your sandal. And you imagine doing this barefoot, like Homo luzonensis. You try not to picture the leeches waiting to latch on, though you suspect they've already found your ankles. Survival here isn't about being the biggest predator. It's about learning to be small enough to slip through unnoticed. And smallness is exactly what Homo luzonensis embodied. They lived on an island where food was scarce and predators were huge, so their bodies adapted. This is the island rule of evolution. Big animals shrink, little animals grow. You may have heard of pygmy elephants and giant rats from other islands. Luzon had its own lineup. Imagine rats the size of cats, perfect prey for tiny hunters. Imagine deer barely reaching your waist, yet swift enough to vanish into ferns. Evolution here doesn't care about your comfort. It cares about balance. Mainstream fact for your sleepy file. Luzon has been surrounded by water for at least 5 million years. No ice age lowered the seas enough to connect it with Asia, which means the ancestors of Homo luzonensis had to raft across, intentionally or accidentally, long before anyone thought navigation was a thing. Historians still argue whether that journey was a planned expedition by ancient seafarers or just a bunch of unlucky folks swept out to sea by a storm. Either way, once they landed, they were stuck, and their descendants became islanders for tens of thousands of years. As you hike through this imagined landscape, your ears catch a low rustle. You freeze. A massive shadow moves in the undergrowth. For a moment, your mind conjures up tigers, but Luzon had no tigers. Instead, your heart sinks as the shape resolves into something even worse. A crocodile. Ancient ones here grew enormous, stretching 5 or 6 meters, practically dinosaurs that forgot they were supposed to retire. The Luzon humans, small as they were, must have treated rivers like haunted zones. One careless sip and you'd be dragged under. But it wasn't all doom. The island also offered pockets of safety. high ridges where wind kept mosquitoes away, forest clearings rich with tubers and edible plants, rock shelters that shielded from typhoons. You pause under a tree, its roots twisting like snakes across the soil, and wonder if Homo luzonensis claimed this very spot as a home. Maybe they wove branches into crude huts. Maybe they climbed these same trunks to pluck fruit. Maybe they cursed the same ants currently biting your wrist. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some archaeologists believe Luzon's early humans may have hunted giant monitor lizards, relatives of the Komodo dragon. Picture yourself sneaking up on a reptile longer than your body, armed with nothing more than sharp sticks and bravery. It sounds like madness, but the bones found in caves suggest lizard dinners were on the menu. Imagine the crunch, the grease, the smell your prehistoric barbecue. You wander further, and the ground softens. You've entered a swamp, where tall grasses sway and the buzzing is relentless. The smell here is swampy sweetness mixed with decay. You pause, swatting at clouds of insects, and you feel the weight of being trapped. There's no mainland to run to, no second option. For Homo luzonensis, this island was both cradle and cage. Their world was bounded by the horizon. Beyond that, only sea. But don't think isolation made them boring. If anything, it made them inventive. You imagine a group gathering at the river's edge, deciding whether to risk crossing for food or stay and starve. You imagine a child pointing at the horizon, asking questions no one could answer. You imagine laughter, too, because even in prehistory, people must have found ways to joke about their struggles. Maybe someone tripped while carrying a lizard tail, and the whole group chuckled at their clumsiness. Humor doesn't fossilize, but it probably mattered as much as fire. You wipe sweat from your brow. The humidity is oppressive. Your shirt clings like a second skin. And you wonder how the tiny humans endured this without electric fans or iced coffee. Maybe their small frames helped them cope, shedding heat faster. Or maybe they just suffered, swatting mosquitoes and hoping the rainy season would pass. Either way, their persistence kept them alive long enough to carve a niche in this island labyrinth. You stop at a cliffside overlook. The jungle spreads below you in rolling green waves. Beyond it, the sea gleams like molten silver under the sun. It looks close, inviting, but you know better. Those waters hide currents that could pull you under in minutes. You grip the rock, dizzy with the realization Homo luzonensis couldn't leave. They were prisoners of geography. And yet, here's the twist without that prison. They might never have existed at all. Your breathing slows. The jungle hums on. Somewhere, bones wait to be found. And you, caught between awe and unease, realize that tonight's story isn't about conquering land or inventing civilization. It's about being small in a big world. And somehow, against the odds, surviving long enough to leave a trace. You pick your way down from the ridge, vines snagging your ankles as though the jungle itself wants to slow you. It isn't just the trees that feel watchful. It's the ghosts of faces you'll never truly see. Because tonight, you're asked to imagine what Homo luzonensis looked like. Not through the clean lines of a reconstruction in a glossy museum, but through the broken fragments left in the dirt. A tooth here, a finger bone there, whispers of bodies that once laughed, argued, and sweated under this same sun. You crouch in the shade of a banyan tree. Its roots curl down like tentacles. And in their shadow, you sketch in your mind a figure only 4 feet tall. Their head tilts curiously, dark eyes reflecting firelight, hair tangled with leaves and smoke. Yet the more you imagine, the stranger the face becomes. Their teeth are small but oddly shaped, some narrow like those of modern humans, others thicker, more primitive. Their finger bones curve like hooks, suggesting a body that still loved to climb, not yet resigned to life on the flat ground. Mainstream fact: the fossils discovered in Callao Cave show a combination of primitive and modern traits teeth that look advanced, finger and toe bones that look ancient, and long bones that suggest a surprisingly small body. This mosaic of features is why scientists gave them their own name in 2019, Homo luzonensis, a brand new cousin introduced into the already crowded family reunion of humanity. But here's where the debates start. Historians still argue whether Luzonensis truly deserves its own species slot, or whether it's simply a quirky variation of Homo erectus, the same species that first ventured out of Africa nearly 2 million years ago. To some, The Luzon bones are just the echoes of old travellers who shrank down to fit their island home. To others, they're evidence of a parallel branch of humanity, one that thrived in isolation before quietly vanishing. Imagine arguing over relatives at a family barbecue. Are they a new cousin, or just Uncle Erectus with a tan? The fossils can't settle the fight. They only smirk in silence. You lean back against the banyan trunk and imagine the proportions of this little ancestor. Picture legs shorter than yours, arms proportionally longer, a torso compact, picture feet gripping tree bark, toes curling around like a child climbing a jungle gym. Modern humans, like you, left climbing mostly to childhood. But these small islanders never outgrew it. The forest was their playground, and their survival strategy depended on it. Here's your quirky tidbit. The finger bones are so curved that some researchers joked they looked like they belonged to tree people. Imagine hands shaped less for smartphones and more for monkey bars. If your thumbs are for texting, theirs were for hanging onto branches while giant reptiles slithered below. It's hard not to picture them swinging gracefully through the canopy. Though, let's be real, they probably looked less Tarzan and more exhausted hiker, desperately holding on. You walk further, and the jungle canopy breaks into a clearing. The sun paints everything gold, and in that light, you can almost see them. A group of small figures, skin gleaming with sweat, gathered around a pile of fruit. One of them cracks open a nut with a stone, teeth flashing as they laugh at a clumsy companion who drops theirs into the mud. Another child perches on a branch overhead, grinning down. The faces are familiar in their expressions, but alien in their details. Wide noses, strong brows, and a frame that seems fragile until you notice the wiry muscles coiled beneath the skin. It's tempting to paint them as primitive, but you know better. To survive here meant being clever enough to hunt, clever enough to avoid crocodiles, clever enough to raise children in a world without hospitals or convenience stores. You press your palm into the dirt, feeling the grit, and realize that every smirk, every squint, every sigh they ever made is gone forever. All you're left with are bones, mute yet eloquent. You smile wryly, thinking of how much we obsess over appearance today. Makeup tutorials, gym memberships, selfies filtered into oblivion. Meanwhile, Homo luzonensis never worried about their aesthetic. Their teeth didn't align for Instagram. Their bodies weren't sculpted for likes. They were shaped only by necessity, the shape of a species honed to fit its cage. You can almost hear them laughing at your mirror anxiety. You think crooked teeth are a tragedy? Try dodging a 6-meter crocodile before breakfast. The forest closes in again as you keep walking, and the ground softens underfoot. You pass a shallow pond where dragonflies skim the surface. Your reflection wavers in the water, and for a moment, another reflection overlays yours. Shorter, darker, with those curved fingers and small teeth. You blink, and the image dissolves, but the idea lingers. Maybe those island faces still haunt the gene pool in ways no one's measured yet. You kneel at the water's edge and imagine one of them doing the same tens of thousands of years ago. They cup water with small hands, their curved fingers spilling it clumsily. They sip, eyes darting to the shadows for signs of danger. You wonder if they saw themselves in the water and felt the same quiet unease you just felt. Recognition mixed with alienness. Did they know they were different? Did they care? Or did they just drink and move on? Too busy surviving to puzzle over self-image. A breeze rattles the leaves overhead. You close your eyes, letting the sound wash over you. The jungle hums like a lullaby, but it's a lullaby layered with tension. Somewhere in that song, tiny humans once moved, blending into a landscape that demanded adaptation. Their faces, though lost to time, flicker behind your eyelids. Not quite you, not quite other, just enough to unsettle you as you drift deeper into their world. You move deeper into the forest, where the smell of damp earth thickens and the undergrowth rattles with unseen life. Hunger creeps in, slow and insistent, reminding you that curiosity alone doesn't keep a body alive. Tonight, you walk in the footsteps of Homo luzonensis not as a tourist, but as a forager. The question lingers. What did these tiny island humans eat? And how did they get it? The jungle offers clues if you look closely. To your right, vines drip with clusters of fruit sweet. Sticky, tempting. You reach for one, but a sudden flash of movement stops you. A giant rat darts across the ground. its body plump and cat-sized, eyes gleaming with suspicion. Your stomach growls. The Luzon humans likely hunted these very rats, roasting them over fires or cracking their bones for marrow. The thought makes you laugh. In a prehistoric buffet, giant rats weren't the you option. They were the main course. Somewhere, you imagine a tiny hunter bragging, "I caught dinner," while waving a tail like a trophy. Mainstream fact. Fossils of deer and giant rats have been found in the same Callao Cave deposits where Homo luzonensis bones rested. That means these animals were part of the environment and likely the diet of Luzon's small inhabitants. If you squint, you can almost see them, crouched in the flickering firelight, gnawing at roasted haunches of rat or deer, grease dripping down their chins. You tread carefully toward a clearing, where the grass parts into a trail. A rustle behind the ferns makes your heart leap. Out steps a deer small-bodied, delicate, with ears twitching nervously. It freezes at your presence. You freeze back? For Homo luzonensis, this would be a test of patience and skill. No bows, no arrows, no fancy traps, just sharpened sticks or stones flung with practiced hands. You imagine crouching low, inching closer, the world narrowing to the rhythm of your breath. Then, a sudden lunge, whether you succeed or fail. Dinner decides itself in seconds. But meat wasn't everything. You brush aside leaves to uncover tubers, earthy and starchy. The kind that fill bellies when hunts go wrong. Nuts hang overhead, their shells hard but crackable with stones. And fruit, plentiful but often tricky. Some safe, some poisonous, all looking alarmingly similar. Survival here wasn't about being bold. It was about knowing which plant wouldn't kill you. Imagine teaching children, eat this one. Not that one, a lesson with no room for mistakes. Here's your quirky tidbit. Archaeologists once uncovered cut marks on the bones of a rhinoceros in Luzon, dating to around 700 years ago, long before Homo luzonensis themselves. Whoever did it butchered the massive animal with stone tools, whether it was an ancestor of Luzon humans or a different species altogether. It shows that island dwellers weren't shy about tackling megafauna when opportunity struck. Picture the absurdity. 4-foot humans standing around a rhinoceros carcass, hacking away with stone flakes, as if to say, "Yep, we're eating like kings tonight." Historians still argue whether Homo luzonensis themselves hunted large animals or scavenged leftovers from nature's accidents. A deer falling into a ravine. A rhinoceros weakened by age, sometimes luck set the table. But even scavenging took courage. Imagine dragging meat away while vultures circled and crocodiles lurked. Eager for their share, you'd have to be quick, strong, and maybe a little reckless. You wipe your brow, heat rising from the ground like steam. Your imagination carries you into a hunt. You're part of a group, small bodies moving silently through the underbrush. The leader signals a flick of the wrist and everyone crouches low. Ahead, a giant rat scurries near a fallen log. You grip a sharp stick, your palms slick. The tension builds, then snaps. You leap, thrust, and the forest explodes in noise. Birds shriek from branches. The rat squeals. Victory or failure is a blur. But when it's done, when the prey lies still, the group erupts in relieved laughter. Tonight, no one goes hungry. You think about your own pantry back home. Shelves lined with instant noodles, cookies, canned soup. Delivery apps promising pizza in 30 minutes or less. What a joke that would sound like to these tiny ancestors. For them, 30 minutes could mean life or death. Catch the rat or starve until morning. You chuckle, shaking your head. If Homo luzonensis saw your snack drawer, they'd call it witchcraft. The jungle hums louder now as dusk approaches. You imagine the shift in routine. Daytime hunts give way to nighttime caution. Fires smolder, their smoke curling into the trees, keeping insects at bay and predators cautious. Around the flames, the Luzon humans tear into roasted meat, chew roots, and maybe, just maybe, share stories, if not in words as you know them, then in gestures, grunts, and laughter. Hunger satisfied, they lean back against the cave walls, bellies full, ready to face tomorrow's grind. You sit down at the edge of a clearing, feeling the fatigue of the day, your stomach knots with imaginary hunger. Though your real-world self is far from starving, you picture what it means to eat with nothing but your own skill. No supermarkets, no refrigerators, Every bite is a triumph. Every meal a reminder of survival against odds. The Luzon humans didn't eat for pleasure. They ate for persistence, and yet you can't help but smile at the thought of them gnawing on giant rats, cracking nuts, and maybe squabbling over who got the fattest lizard tail. Food is culture, even here in prehistory. Theirs was a cuisine of necessity, but also of creativity. Maybe they seasoned with wild herbs. Maybe they shared with neighbors, building bonds around the fire. Maybe they even teased each other for clumsy hunts because laughter, like hunger, is universal. The forest dims, shadows stretching long. You rub your arms against the chill creeping in. Somewhere nearby, an owl hoots. The hunt is over, the day's hunger sated, and the tiny humans settle into rest. You, too, lean back, closing your eyes, stomach rumbling faintly as you dream of meals older than memory. You wake to the crackle of an imaginary fire, the kind that smells of smoke and charred wood. Though in truth, you don't know if Homo luzonensis ever mastered it. Tonight's question burns hotter than the embers. Did these tiny humans wield fire and tools like their cousins? Or were they scraping by in simpler ways? You crouch in the cave again, staring at a pile of stone flakes. They look crude, unremarkable sharp edges chipped into shape. Nothing like the fine blades you've seen in documentaries about Neanderthals. Archaeologists found these kinds of artifacts near animal bones in Luzon. And it's hard to argue with cut marks etched into fossils. Something sharp sliced those bones. And it wasn't crocodile teeth. The mystery lies in whether the Luzon humans made the tools themselves, or simply used what nature provided. Mainstream fact. Stone tools associated with butchered animal remains have been found in Luzon dating as far back as 700 years ago. That predates Homo luzonensis by hundreds of thousands of years, suggesting their ancestors or other humans already knew how to flake rocks into cutting edges. But here's the scholarly snag. Archaeologists have not yet found clear evidence of fire use in the Callao Cave layers tied to luzonensis. No ash pits, no charred bones, no telltale smoke stains. Historians still argue whether the absence of fire proves they never mastered it, or whether the evidence simply washed away in floods and erosion. You lean close to the imaginary fire, warming your hands, though the embers may be only in your mind. If they had fire, they had light in the darkness, warmth against the chill, safety from predators, and roasted meals instead of raw. If they didn't, then nights in Luzon were long, damp, and dangerous. Imagine sitting in total darkness while crocodiles slithered in rivers below and snakes coiled in branches overhead. You'd huddle together, heart thudding, every sound magnified by the dark. That, my friend, is the stuff of prehistoric nightmares. Here's your quirky tidbit. In the absence of direct fire evidence, some scientists have playfully suggested that Homo luzonensis may have relied heavily on natural fire, like lightning strikes igniting forest patches. Picture them cautiously approaching a smoking tree, poking at embers, maybe dragging a burning branch back to the cave like a prize, only to realize, too late, that fire has a mind of its own. A small spark becomes a roaring inferno. And suddenly, their survival tool is trying to evict them from their own forest. It's both hilarious and terrifying prehistoric slapstick with very high stakes. You imagine handling a stone flake? It bites your palm with its sharpness. Effective but primitive. These weren't elegant spearheads or arrow tips. They were closer to nature's own knives. Simple, disposable, sharp enough for the job. You kneel by the bones of a deer, striking a flake against sinew, and the hide parts with surprising ease. The process is messy, but it works. That's the heart of Luzon technology. Crude, yet sufficient. Historians still argue whether Homo luzonensis even had the brains for innovation, or simply coasted on the leftovers of earlier tool makers. Intelligence is tricky to measure through bones and teeth alone. The curve of a finger hints at tree climbing, not abstract thought. But surviving on an isolated island for tens of thousands of years, that itself suggests adaptability. You can't fake survival. Either you solve problems, or you disappear. You press your back to the cave wall, eyes half shut, and picture a small group at work. One chips flakes from a core stone, each strike ringing against the cavern walls. Another prees marrow from bones with a shard. A child watches, mimicking motions with a stick. There is rhythm here, a kind of proto-ritual. Technology isn't just about tools, it's about passing knowledge down. Even if the knowledge is as simple as hit rock with rock until sharp. Your mind drifts to your own kitchen drawer, cluttered with knives of every size, serrated, chefs, purring. If Homo luzonensis saw that drawer, they'd think you were royalty, or maybe a lunatic for hoarding so much sharp metal. They'd hold up one of your butter knives and laugh at its dainty uselessness. Their entire toolkit fit in a pocket, and they got by just fine. Meanwhile, you've probably got 6 knives you've never used, still waiting for that one recipe you swore you'd try. The cave grows darker as you sit, and you sense the absence of fire more acutely. No glow, no warmth, just the soft drip of water echoing in the chamber. You pull your knees to your chest, imagining what it meant to live like this. Perhaps the Luzon humans had eyes sharper in the dark, or instincts tuned to every rustle, or perhaps they simply endured, trembling but unbroken. If so, their resilience humbles you. But another thought tickles your mind. What if they did master fire, and it was simply lost to time? Ashes don't always survive. Charcoal can wash away. Perhaps every night their caves glowed red, and we just haven't found the proof yet. The debate continues, and maybe it always will. The bones won't confess. The stone stays silent, and the fire, if it burned, has long since cooled. You glance at the pile of flakes again. They seem almost alive, shimmering in your imagination with potential. With just a shard of stone, any human could carve meat, shave wood, even defend against predators. It's the difference between bare survival and something resembling control. You hold one up to the flickering light of your imaginary campfire, and the edge gleams. Not elegant, not advanced, but sharp enough to matter. The night presses in heavier now. You lie back on the cave floor, hearing the hiss of the imagined fire fade into the drip-drip of water. Whether or not Homo luzonensis had fire, they endured, and endurance, you realize, is its own kind of brilliance. The fire, whether real or imagined, fades behind you as you step once more into the tangled wild of Luzon. Tonight you leave the cave and turn your thoughts outward, across the restless seas. Because however fascinating these tiny island humans are, they were not alone in the grand family tree. Their story sits beside others, some small, some large, all strange cousins scattered across time. If you want to understand Homo luzonensis, you have to compare them with their neighbors across the waters. You find a perch on a cliff, jungle wind tugging at your clothes, and gaze toward the horizon. Out there lies Flores, another island in Indonesia, where scientists found the so-called hobbits Homo floresiensis. They were about the same height as the Luzon people, 4 feet of wiry endurance, and they lived until at least 50 years ago. Sound familiar? You smirk, because it's almost as if the islands of Southeast Asia were hosting their own competition for world's smallest human species. Mainstream fact. Homo floresiensis was first discovered in 2003 in Callao Cave, and the announcement shocked the world, just like Luzonensis years later. The hobbits forced scientists to accept that multiple small-bodied humans had evolved independently in isolated islands. Historians still argue whether this dwarfing was a shared adaptation or simply coincidence. Parallel experiments run by nature in 2 separate laboratories. You imagine them both, the Flores hobbits and the Luzon islanders, living at the same time, separated by sea, never knowing of each other's existence. One roasts a lizard in Flores, the other gnaws a rat bone in Luzon. 2 flickering fires in the night, 2 small groups tucked into caves, 2 humbling reminders that humanity was once a crowded field, not a one-species show. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some scientists speculate that legends of small forest folk in Southeast Asia, the Ebu-Gogo in Flores, the Duende in the Philippines, may echo faint folk memory of these tiny humans. Of course, it's a leap across tens of thousands of years, but it's a delicious thought. Campfire stories passed down so long that they fossilized into folklore. Picture yourself at a Filipino village gathering, hearing whispers of mischievous duende, and realizing with a chill that the myth might be the shadow of an extinct cousin. But it wasn't just the hobbits. Far to the north, in the icy reaches of Siberia, Denisovans thrived. You've heard of them. The ghost species, known mostly from DNA, they weren't small, They were sturdy, cold-resistant, leaving only a handful of bones, but a legacy etched in modern human genes. And yet, even here in tropical Luzon, they might matter. Historians still argue whether Homo luzonensis shared ancestry with Denisovans or with Homo erectus. The debate swirls like the sea currents between islands, unresolved. Tantalizing, you chuckle softly at the thought. If this were a family reunion, the roll call would be chaos. Neanderthals at the barbecue, Denisovans hogging the dessert table, Flora's hobbits chasing kids around, Luzon humans curled up shyly in the corner, and you Homo sapiens showing up late with your phone out, recording everything for TikTok. You can almost hear them groan. This cousin is the one who took over the whole house. You grip the cliff edge tighter. The sea below crashes, white foam against black rocks. How did these small species end up so spread out? That question gnaws at you. If Homo erectus spread across Asia nearly 2 million years ago, then some descendants must have hopped islands. Shrinking and changing along the way, Flores got hobbits, Luzon got luzonensis. Each isolated pocket became its own experiment. It's like pressing copy-paste on a human and dropping them into different survival games. The results are both eerie and endearing. Your stomach clenches, not from hunger this time, but from awe. Imagine the sheer variety of humans alive 0 years ago. In Europe, Neanderthals. In Asia, Denisovans. In Flores, hobbits. In Luzon, tiny islanders. And somewhere in Africa, your own species, poised to sweep across the world. You weren't alone. Not at all. You were one of many, and the thought makes you both proud and uneasy. The jungle around you murmurs, as if agreeing. You hear a bird call, shrill and haunting, and it reminds you of distance. Distance, not just in geography, but in understanding, because for all the fossils and DNA samples, the truth of how these species interacted remains a fog. Did they ever meet? Trade, fight, love. Historians still argue, and you realize they may never stop. Bones can tell you shape, but not story. Still, you lean into the possibility. Perhaps Luzon humans never met Neanderthals or Denisovans, but they must have crossed paths with modern humans eventually. Did they greet them with curiosity or caution? Did they retreat into the forest, outcompeted by taller, more technologically savvy cousins? Or did they blend in, their genes dissolving into yours so seamlessly that you carry them without knowing? Science hasn't answered, but the silence of Luzon hums with questions. The breeze picks up, carrying the salty tang of the sea. You imagine a raft, crude logs lashed together, bobbing against the tide. On it, figures huddle small, weary, their eyes scanning the horizon. They are not Flora's hobbits. They are not Denisovans. They are not you. They are Luzon humans, chasing survival across treacherous waters, whether by design or accident. They made the crossing, and their descendants carried the torch for millennia. The raft drifts in your vision until it vanishes into foam, leaving you blinking at empty waves. You laugh softly, shaking your head. We moderns like to think we're special, unique, inevitable. But the truth is, we're just the last survivor of a messy, diverse clan. If history had rolled the dice differently, maybe the world today would belong to hobbits, or to Luzon humans, or to some blend of all of us. Instead, it's you, sitting on a cliff, trying not to get bitten by mosquitoes while pondering cousins who vanished without fanfare. The jungle grows quiet now. Night settling in, stars prick the sky above. The same stars that once guided tiny humans across dark seas. You pull your knees close, feeling both small and connected. Across islands, across time, across species, you sense the web of humanity. And though some threads have broken, their echoes still shimmer in the night. The wind off the cliff grows cooler, and you retreat back into the jungle where the air feels heavy again. Damp with the promise of storms, Luzon, for all its beauty, has never been a gentle place. Tonight, you step into the raw theatre of nature that shaped the destiny of Homo luzonensis. Food and tools were only half the battle weather, and earth were the other half. And they played rough. The first drop of rain strikes your arm like a warning. Then another, and suddenly the sky breaks open. Sheets of water hammer the leaves, drumming a relentless rhythm. Within moments you are drenched, clothes clinging, hair plastered to your forehead. For the Luzon humans, This wasn't an occasional inconvenience. Monsoons were a seasonal certainty. Imagine weeks of constant downpour, turning trails into rivers, caves into muddy traps, and daily survival into a soggy endurance test. Mainstream fact. Luzon sits squarely in the path of typhoons. And even in prehistory, the island would have faced storms of staggering intensity. Winds over 100 kilometers an hour, waves towering high enough to smash boats, rainfall flooding entire valleys. Historians still argue whether such storms might have periodically wiped out populations or forced migrations inland, reshaping not only the land, but the fate of those small-bodied survivors. Lightning flashes, illuminating the forest in blinding bursts. The crash that follows rattles your bones. You imagine a group of Homo luzonensis huddled in their cave. Children crying, adults staring at the fire if they had it, praying it wouldn't sputter out. Outside, trees topple like dominoes, rivers swell, and predators are driven closer by floodwaters. Survival meant waiting, hungry and anxious, until the skies cleared. You sigh, because even your modern raincoat would be laughably inadequate here. Here's your quirky tidbit. Volcanic eruptions were another hazard. Luzon is peppered with volcanoes, many still active today. Picture a tiny community living in the shadow of a mountain, unaware that one day it might roar to life, spewing ash that blotted out the sun. In 1991, Mount Pinatubo's eruption changed global temperatures for years. Imagine something similar thousands of years ago with no warning system. For Homo luzonensis, disaster would have arrived as thunder underfoot, a suffocating cloud, and rivers of ash. No escapa, just raw awe and terror. You step carefully over a ridge where the ground feels soft, unstable, landslides. You remember, in a landscape carved by steep hills and heavy rain. One wrong moment could send entire groups tumbling with the earth. Even now, you feel the tug of mud under your sandals, and you picture small humans scrambling, grabbing at roots, desperate to stay above the collapse. The land itself was a predator. Historians still argue whether these natural forces directly contributed to the disappearance of Homo luzonensis. Was it climate shifts, violent eruptions, relentless storms, or was it simply the slow grind of competition with newcomers like modern humans? The debate is as endless as the rain, but one truth feels clear. Luzon was never a forgiving home. To survive here, you needed resilience. And perhaps that's why the Luzon humans adapted into their peculiar form. You push through the rain, shoes squelching in mud. The forest canopy funnels water into sudden streams that swirl around your ankles. Somewhere nearby, a river swells, roaring with power. You hesitate to go closer. Stories of crocodiles still gnaw at your nerves, but you can't help imagining the scene. The river bursts its banks, flooding the jungle. Prehistoric families scramble uphill, dragging children, clutching what little food they had stored. And yet, amid the chaos, maybe some found opportunity. Floodwaters wash fish onto the forest floor. A feast for anyone quick enough to snatch them before they wriggled away. Disaster and bounty often wore the same mask. You stop at the edge of a clearing. The storm slackens, but mist hangs thick in the air. The world feels muffled, as though the forest itself is holding its breath. You sit on a damp log, rain dripping from leaves onto your shoulders. In this silence, you sense the precariousness of life on Luzon. One storm too many, one eruption too violent, one season too harsh, and a population could dwindle beyond recovery. Your mind wanders to your modern comforts again. A typhoon today is tracked by satellites, warnings blasted on phones, evacuations planned with buses and shelters. But here, tens of thousands of years ago, survival was a coin toss. You chuckle dryly. Your biggest storm anxiety is the Wi-Fi going out. Their biggest anxiety was whether the roof of their world would cave in. Perspective is a humbling thing. Another flash of lightning jerks you back. You imagine, just for a second, that you see them illuminated, small figures darting between trees, soaked to the bone, hair plastered flat, eyes wide with fear. Then the flash fades, and you're alone again. But the image clings to you, haunting in its realism. You take a deep breath, inhaling the scent of wet soil and rotting vegetation. This was their cradle and their crucible. The storms didn't just threaten them, they shaped them. Bodies grew small, nimble, resilient. Communities stayed tight. perhaps for safety as much as for food. Even without written records, the land left its mark on them, carving survival strategies into their very bones. The rain eases into drizzle, and you rise from the log. Overhead, clouds break to reveal stars once more. They twinkle faintly, as though indifferent to the chaos below. For Homo luzonensis, each storm, each quake, each eruption was a test. Some nights they passed, other nights the jungle claimed its due. But through it all, they endured long enough to etch their bones into the cave where you first began. You smile faintly, shaking water from your hair. Even drenched, even chilled. You realize you're lucky to witness this world through imagination rather than necessity. Yet a part of you wonders, if you had lived here, could you have survived even a week? You think of the floods, the crocs, the volcanoes, the storms, and laugh softly. Because you already know the answer. The storm mist lingers in the trees as you trudge deeper, your breath visible in the damp air. Tonight, you let your mind drift beyond bones and storms. Because humans, no matter how small or strange, never lived by food and shelter alone. They lived by stories, or at least the beginnings of them. Homo luzonensis left no carvings, no cave paintings, no written word. And yet, you can't shake the feeling that even here, in this jungle, sparks of myth flickered before myth had a name. You find a hollow in the forest where trees part into a natural amphitheater. The silence here is uncanny, as if the jungle itself expects performance. You sit cross-legged on damp earth, imagining a circle of small figures gathered by firelight. One gestures broadly, miming the leap of a lizard. The others chuckle, teeth gleaming in the glow. Was that a story? A joke? Or simply a retelling of the day's hunt? Mainstream fact. Storytelling is one of the oldest human traits. Though when it began is impossible to pin down, even Neanderthals may have shared symbolic rituals. Historians still argue whether non-sapiens humans like Luzonensis had language at all, or whether their stories were only gestures, cries, laughter, and rhythm. But as you watch your imaginary Luzon circle, you realize that communication, whatever form it took, was enough to bind them. Without it, survival would have cracked apart. You lean forward, your ears straining as though you might actually catch their voices. Maybe the myths of Luzon weren't myths yet. Maybe they were warnings. Don't drink at that river. Crocodile waits. Or lessons. Follow the deer tracks at dawn, not dusk. Yet, even practical speech has a way of sprouting wings. You chuckle softly, one exaggerated croc story, retold a dozen times. And suddenly the monster is big enough to swallow the moon. Myths grow like mold in damp caves. Inevitable. Here's your quirky tidbit. In modern Filipino folklore, the duende are small, mischievous forest spirits. Some live in anthills, others under trees, offering blessings or curses. Folklorists sometimes joke half seriously that these tales echo faint memories of small forest-dwelling people, maybe even shadows of extinct cousins like Homo luzonensis. Of course, the timelines are absurdly long, but still, the whisper lingers. Maybe once, seeing small figures slip into the trees. Ancient Filipinos crafted stories that hardened into myth. You close your eyes, letting the idea wash over you. Imagine being a child in Luzon 50, Zolan years ago, listening to elders point toward the hills, telling you not to wander there because the old ones lived there. Who were the old ones? Other humans, maybe, or just the memory of them. The line between history and legend is thin when no one writes it down. The forest hums softly. Insects drone like background music, and you imagine rhythm rising in the cave. Perhaps they clapped sticks or stamped feet, turning warnings into chants. Rhythm is memory's anchor. Maybe they danced, tiny shadows flickering against limestone walls. Maybe, in those dances, the seeds of ritual sprouted. You grin. The world's first karaoke night, minus microphones, plus a healthy dose of fear and survival. Historians still argue whether symbolic thought belongs solely to Homo sapiens. Did Neanderthals bury their dead with flowers? Did Denisovans carve ornaments? Did Luzon humans dream under the stars, whispering about what lay beyond? The bones can't tell, but your imagination insists. If they had the wit to cross seas, to hunt giant rats, to endure volcanoes, surely they had the wit to make sense of it all in stories. You glance up at the stars breaking through the mist. Imagine a Luzon elder pointing at those same constellations, weaving patterns no modern astronomer will ever know. Maybe the stars were crocodile eyes, watching from the dark. Maybe the Milky Way was a trail of rats leading to the afterlife. You smile, because these myths, though lost, feel as real as the dripping forest around you. Your breath slows. You picture the myths mutating across generations. A child grows, repeats the tale, adds a flourish. Another child passes it on, exaggerating further. After centuries, the crocodile becomes a god. The rat a trickster, the storm a punishment. Myth doesn't need parchment, it needs only time and tongues. You think of your own bedtime stories, fairy tales, cartoons, urban legends. They feel distant, yet not so different. Once upon a time, your ancestors were also crouched around firelight, clapping rhythm into warnings, turning survival into memory. The Luzon humans, in their tiny, curved, fingered way, were likely no exception. They may not have told stories as you define them, but they wove the jungle into meaning. And that, you realize, is the root of all myth. Here's a soft laugh for you. Imagine explaining Netflix to Homo luzonensis. We watch stories on glowing boxes. They'd probably shake their heads, hold up a stick, and say, "We tell stories with this," and maybe, just maybe, their version was better for the soul. You lie back in the clearing, damp earth pressing against your spine. The forest canopy above seems to ripple. Alive with secrets, you let yourself drift, imagining the voices of tiny ancestors chanting, laughing, warning, exaggerating. The myths before myth, rising and fading with each breath. And though you'll never know their words, the silence here feels full, as if the jungle itself remembers. The forest quiets around you. And for the first time tonight, the jungle feels too still. No storm, no thunder of hooves, no chatter of birds, just silence. It presses down like a weight. And you realize this is the silence of endings. Tonight you follow Homo luzonensis on their last trails, to the moment when their small footprints vanished into history. You picture them moving along a ridge at dawn. The air is cool, the ground damp from last night's rain. They are small shadows against the trees, carrying nothing but sharp flakes of stone and whatever courage they can muster. They do not know that their kind is fading. Extinction, after all, never feels sudden to those living through it. It creeps like a shadow until the last fire sputters out. Mainstream fact, the youngest fossils of Homo luzonensis date to about 50. 0 years ago. After that, the trail goes cold. No bones, no tools, no signs of survival. Historians still argue whether they were outcompeted by arriving Homo sapiens, whether they dwindled due to environmental changes, or whether they simply blended into incoming populations until their distinct features vanished. It's a mystery wrapped in silence. You step carefully over roots, ears pricked for answers that won't come. What would extinction have looked like day to day? Maybe fewer children born each season, food scarcer with each year. Maybe storms grew harsher, volcanoes angrier. Maybe a new kind of human appeared on the shoreline taller, stronger, carrying fire that burned hotter and tools sharper than stone flakes. You picture a meeting, a small Luzon human peering from behind a tree at a modern sapiens. Curiosity and fear mixing in equal measure. Did they recognize kinship, or only danger? Here's your quirky tidbit. On Flores Island, where the hobbits lived, some locals believe the small folk never truly vanished. Stories of the Ebu Gogo describe little people who stole food and whispered in strange tongues. A few villagers even swore sightings into the 20th century. Could Luzon have its own hidden legends? Perhaps whispers of small shapes in the forest at night, fading into duende tales. Myth as camouflage for extinction. You pause at the riverbank, watching water rush past. Did Homo luzonensis try to leave when times grew too hard? Did they lash together rafts, push into currents, and vanish into seas they couldn't master? Or did they stay, stubborn and rooted, until hunger and storms wore them down? Historians still argue, but the river gives no reply. It only rushes forward, carrying silt, bones, and silence toward the sea. Extinction isn't dramatic here. There are no dinosaur-ending meteors, no sudden apocalypse. Instead, it's the slow unraveling of a thread. A child dies of fever. A hunter fails to bring food. A storm topples a shelter. Each small loss chips away until one day, There is no one left to tell the stories. No one left to pass on the rhythm of survival. The jungle swallows their last footprints, and time erases the rest. You kneel by the water, pressing your palm into the mud. The print you leave will vanish in minutes, washed clean. That is how Homo luzonensis disappeared, not in a blaze of glory, but in the slow wash of time. And yet, unlike your fading print, their bones endured by sheer accident. Some were hidden deep in Callao Cave, waiting tens of thousands of years for strangers with brushes and flashlights to find them. Their extinction is real, but so is their persistence. You think about your own world, your own species. We like to imagine ourselves permanent, inevitable. But Homo luzonensis whispers otherwise. They lived here for tens of millennia, longer than most modern civilizations. They thrived, adapted, endured storms, and still, in the end, they vanished. You laugh softly, a little bitter, realizing that one day we may be someone else's fossils. Our cities nothing more than strange ruins for distant cousins to puzzle over. The forest rustles faintly, and for a moment you imagine you're not alone. Perhaps a small shadow lingers, curved fingers clinging to bark, eyes gleaming in the dark, a survivor that never was, a ghost clinging to roots. The thought chills you, then soothes you. Maybe extinction is never total. Maybe it leaves echoes, in myths, in jans, in the silence that still feels full when you listen closely. You rise and follow a narrow trail uphill. The climb is slow, your breath heavy, but when you reach the top, the view opens wide. Below, the jungle stretches to the sea, endless waves of green merging with endless waves of blue. It's beautiful. It's lonely. And you realize this is the view Homo luzonensis may have seen in their final generations, standing on ridges, wondering if the horizon held salvation or only danger. The sun dips low, painting the world in fading gold. You linger there, a witness to absence. The tiny humans are gone. But the island remembers them. In its storms, its caves, its myths, in the fossils waiting for hands to uncover them, in your own breath, as you speak their name into the night. Homo luzonensis. They may have vanished without farewell, but tonight, at least, their story lives again. The sun is set fully now, and the jungle dissolves into shadow. The ridge you stand upon feels less like a perch and more like a bridge to another time. Tonight you return, at last, to the cave where the story began. Calao's yawning mouth gapes before you, blacker than the night sky above. You hesitate at the threshold, because stepping inside again feels like entering not just stone, but memory. You duck into the cool darkness, the air thick with damp limestone. Your footsteps echo, the sound oddly fragile in such a vast chamber. Here, among stalactites dripping like frozen fangs, fragments of Homo luzonensis once lay hidden, teeth the size of corn kernels, a curved toe bone, a femur no larger than a flute, tiny pieces of a vanished species, waiting to be recognized. Mainstream fact. It wasn't until 2019 that scientists formally announced Homo luzonensis as a distinct species, after years of careful study. That revelation expanded the map of humanity, proving once again that our family tree is tangled, with branches sprouting and breaking in unexpected places. Historians still argue whether these Luzon folk truly deserve full species status, or if they were simply eccentric island versions of older humans. But the cave itself doesn't argue. It just holds the bones, indifferent to classification. You settle on the cave floor, cross-legged, and close your eyes. You can almost hear them still, the scrape of stone flakes, the patter of bare feet, the quiet murmurs of a people who never imagined their bones would one day be famous. They whisper in the cracks of the stone, in the dust you breathe. Not words, not language, but presence. Here's your quirky tidbit. When the fossils were first uncovered, the archaeologists joked about their delicate size, calling them tiny mystery humans. Even now, in scientific circles, the Luzon bones have an aura of strangeness. Unlike Neanderthals with their massive skulls or Denisovans with their robust DNA legacy, Homo luzonensis is elusive. More questions than answers. It's almost as if the island itself keeps its secrets close, giving you just enough to spark wonder, never enough to satisfy it. The fire you imagined earlier flickers again in your mind, filling the cavern with orange glow. Small figures gather near, their shadows long and wavering. They don't look at you with fear or awe, they simply exist, as they once did, chewing roasted meat, stretching tired limbs, eyes drooping with exhaustion. You watch them yawn, curl up, and fall asleep against the stone. Their breaths are shallow, steady, like the cave itself sighing. You draw your knees up and let your head rest against the cold wall. Your eyelids droop. The story has carried you from bones to forests, from storms to myths, and now back again to silence. The silence isn't empty, though it's full of echoes of every human who lived and died here, of every laugh, every shriek, every heartbeat that once belonged to a body, now reduced to dust. You think of your own heartbeat, steady in your chest, fragile in its persistence. For all your modern technology, you're just as mortal as they were. The Luzon humans remind you of that not with fear, but with humility. They lived small lives in a dangerous place, and yet, somehow, their story found you. That is their immortality. You lie down fully now, the cave floor hard beneath your back. The stone is cold, but it cradles you like an ancient bed. You close your eyes, and in the darkness behind your eyelids, you see stars again. The same stars that once glimmered above Luzon's forests, guiding small humans through storms and nights. They are unchanged, indifferent to your presence, and yet you feel comfort in their indifference. The whispers fade, the fire dims, the cave breathes softly, and you, lulled by the weight of time, slip towards sleep. Let your breathing slow with mine now. The story has reached its end, but the echoes linger like faint embers in a dark cave. You are no longer trudging through wet jungle or crouching over stone flakes. You are simply here, in your own bed, wrapped in your own silence. The tiny humans of Luzon, with their curved fingers and small bones, have retreated back into the earth where they belong. But their presence, faint and mysterious, leaves you with a strange comfort. The cave around you fades into gentle blackness. Its walls dissolve. The dripping water softens into the hush of your fan or the quiet of your room. All the sharp edges of survival smooth out into calm. No storms, no crocodiles, no hunger, just steady stillness. Imagine lying in the same posture as those tiny ancestors, curled gently on your side, letting exhaustion carry you. Their world was wild and unforgiving, yet they found moments of rest, moments of warmth, moments of peace. Tonight, you borrow that peace. You let their survival, however brief in the sweep of history, cradle you toward your own rest. Each breath you take is slower than the last. Each thought drifts further from the noise of the day. The echoes of the past are only whispers now, faint and harmless. The cave closes softly behind you, like a door easing shut. And in this quiet, in this fading story, you find the gentlest truth, that even the smallest lives matter, that even the most fragile traces endure, and that even now, you are allowed to rest. Good night, my friend. Sleep deeply, dream lightly, and let the echoes carry you into morning.